The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in this episode are that of the guest and host and do not necessarily reflect the values of sponsors or other associated organizations. Welcome to the Parental Compass. I'm your host, Bobby Williams. Please like, share, subscribe, leave a comment, or look us up on Spotify. Just look up Parental Compass. You'll find us on Spotify. We're coming to the end of 2020. What a year it's been. Not the best, but it was also the year that we started this show, which has been something that's been very special to me. This episode is special because it's going to be sort of our year in review episode. We took a few of our favorite moments from the last 15 episodes and put them together in a nice little package. I want to thank everyone who has helped make this possible. Family Education and Support Services, our sponsor AmeriGroup, and all the guests who have taken the time to come and be on this show. We're going to get into a quick word from AmeriGroup, but first, it's the end of 2020. We got to do it big. Happy New Year! Let's go! A lot of different roles in life. Parent, coworker, friend. Well, AmeriGroup offers whole care for the whole you. It's all covered. Doctor visits, prescriptions, extra vision benefits, and even help gain your GED. Visit chooseamerigroup.com/WA. Like, the other parent is kind of actively trying to turn your kids against you. What's the answer there,
My encouragement has always been to just continue to stay focused on your relationship with the child, and not to engage into any of the negativity of what's going on. Because, Bob, I tell you, it ends up becoming more problematic for a person to feel the need to justify their side. The child has been exposed to some information from one parent, and now the other parent wants to explain themselves to the child as to why or what ultimately happened. And that's just something that we don't encourage. I would always encourage a parent to just, if a child has been exposed to information and now this child is saying, hey, mom or dad said this, to just really engage with the child and how they feel about what was going on and what they were exposed to, as opposed to going into details. No, that didn't happen that way, or, to engage the child in a conversation.
We've talked before, and it seems like a lot of parents have this idea that their goal is to have happy children, but you disagree with that a little bit. Tell me about that.
Well, I think the desire. Can you imagine a parent who didn't want their children?
Obviously, you want your kids to be happy, but is happiness the ultimate goal?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it?
Yeah. So I guess my thought on that is that we do want them to be happy, but the road to them being happy isn't that we created it. What we did was we gave them, hopefully, the tools and the perspective to figure out what they need to do in order to achieve their happiness.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I came up with a long time ago when I was doing classes is a child gains no muscle from the weight you carried for them. And if you think about that, right? Okay, so it's like, oh, let me fix that. I know you're not happy, and so. And parents struggle with this, by the way. If you're in a marriage that lasts, which is half of us, and you have children, typically you're going to have different parenting styles.
Mm-hmm.
And one person's going to be like rigid, and this is the way you march, and the other's going to be soft, and we call them marshmallow parents. And they both are full of good intentions and want their children to be happy. And one person is saying you need to learn to do it yourself, and the other person puts a pillow under you so you don't ever get a bruise or a bump.
Mm.
And somewhere in between there lies perhaps the balance that it will serve a child. most couples just crack up, and I say there's a 90% chance you married somebody with an opposite parenting style.
Yeah.
You know,
I heard this great metaphor about this once. I don't remember where I heard it, but it's like, and I don't even know if this is true, but they were talking about a caterpillar becoming a butterfly, and the caterpillar makes a little cocoon. And then in order for it to get out, it has to kind of push through. But if you were just to cut open the cocoon, the caterpillar would just sort of come out all gooey. But it's through the process of like pushing its wings out that the caterpillar fluids move into the wings, and it's able to be a butterfly. So it's almost like the struggle makes you into who you are in a way.
It's called the chrysalis is the term, I think, for that cocoon and that process. And actually, when we were doing the Winning at Parenting program, perhaps they still do, we used that exact same story in talking to parents about children developing and needing to have enough of a struggle that they build their own muscle and strength. And that's very hard for some parents because they don't want to see their child uncomfortable.
Well, that kind of brings up an idea of equality, and you hear kids all the time like, well, that's not fair, or it's not equal. And does everything need to always be equal all the time? Because it seems like it can't be. I mean, it should be, but.
Well, I would really advise that parents don't get into counting peas and who's got more peas on which plate, or what did you spend for Christmas or Hanukkah on so-and-so? Tally it up. Is it the same? Because it's never ending. What's the core issue? It's, do you see me? Do you love me as much? Am I held to the same standard? And so that's a more fruitful discussion. Is there a time I can spend with you every day that lets you feel special?
Yeah.
And then I look at, are we rewarding kids when they're doing really well? So are you giving kids a lot of attention when they're playing together well, when they're having a dance party, when they're doing something creative? You have your reward system set up so that you give the most pizzazz in your family to when things are going nicely in the family.
Yeah. Well, it seems just like if a child feels like their base needs are covered, then they're fine. And that's how you can give them a little bit of that security, is kind of what I'm hearing you say.
Yes. And I do think that there needs to be some training in our growing up years. It's like, how can you get along with somebody who's getting a little bit more on one occasion and trust that you're going to get a little more on another occasion? Sibling relationships are great opportunities for us to learn flexibility, how not to make a little thing turn into a big thing, how to let go of resentments, how to forgive.
All those ideas, but that's the time when kids really need to hear love the most, is when you're really upset with them.
That is our fifth rule. The time they most need to hear it is the time you feel least able to say it.
Yeah.
You must always send a constant and continual message of unconditional love. And the time, like I said, the time you feel least able to say it is probably the time that they most need to hear it. When they've screwed up, when they've made a mess, they've done something wrong, that's when you show up, put your arm around them and tell them, I don't like what you did, but I love you. You're of me and I'm of you and I love you. And that's when they need to hear that confirmation that they're loved.
And you're not for spankings in general. Why is that?
Because I don't think it works.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be in favor. I'm not opposed to it because I feel like it's brutalizing kids. I think that it is, it's a good thing to be more descriptive rather than calling it spanking. That somehow legitimizes it.
Mm-hmm.
On what right would you tell me that you have the right on what basis would you claim the right to hit a child?
Yeah. Well,
Because you're bigger, because you're stronger, because you're older? Those would always seem to be things that would disqualify you from the right to hit the children. But the thing that I want you to think about is you hit a child, it hurts. And what are they thinking about? My arm hurts. And then immediately you're not fair, and they're no longer thinking about what it was that they did or what they're going to do the next time.
Be kind to yourself, or it's okay to not be okay. All those types of things. And I think me and a lot of people, when we hear that, it's like, yeah, that's good for everyone else, but not me. You know, I got things I have to do. And so, I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's interesting. Our minds and how we've been taught get in our way, because typically when we're stressed out, we try to manage more. And the manage process of our brains is what gets us stressed out. Perfect example is in some of the trainings I've done, people, and this is nothing against people that like lists, but people do lists, and I'm like, okay, cool. And they feel a sense of accomplishment when they get 1 through 15 done.
Yeah.
Yet if they only get 3, they're stressed out. And there's a couple points to this. One, when you're done with a list, what happens next? You have another list. So that might not be the solution. That's the first point. And the second point is, let it be okay if you get 3 things done, because that's what needed to get done. Don't stress out about, I've still got 12. But maybe one was taking your spouse or your child to the doctor, or dealing with a flat tire, and instantly as we're doing this, probably some of the people watching are going to notice their brain's doing a lot of yeah buts, and that's what I'm talking about. It's discerning that just because you hear that inside talk doesn't mean it's the best thing to move forward.
Yeah. How can you flip out of that attitude? Or you think just trying to be kind, or is there any like active thing you can do to rewire your brain a little?
There is. The first thing is to stop your part in it, meaning you got to become aware that it's happening, and then stop your part, which is, don't get on the hamster wheel with the other person. Don't get on the hamster wheel with your brain. And then it sounds silly, but the truth is to find a happy place. It's to disengage whatever you need to do to re-engage and get back in the moment. And it sounds kind of trite, but I can, there's something I teach called a reacclimator. So when you notice you're stressed, or you're not in the moment anymore, or you're anxious, just take a deep breath, and that oftentimes interrupt the brain from going 90. And then literally do a where and when am I? Like it's Tuesday and I'm in Tacoma. And I'm also wondering if it's really Tuesday because of COVID, but I think we're right. And then the third thing is to tell yourself everything is okay, and you're going to notice your nervous system will settle down. And then do your best to become aware of it. If there's 5 things that are stressing you out, deal with maybe 1.
Yeah.
Right? And you're going to get some resistance when you first start trying, because your brain thought that by getting all 5 you could relax. And what I'm saying is, no, just get 1 done and work on relaxing.
You've heard parents say before, or at least I have, like, I want my child to be colorblind, to not see race. And while that may have a good intention, it's kind of an outdated way of thinking. Can you speak on that a little bit?
Colorblindness is, in my opinion, is racism. And I say that as a child that was raised by a mom that often that ascribed to that. And it wasn't because she was intentionally being racist. She thought that it was a way to, I think she thought that insulated me from, my mother's white, for some reason. And it actually made it worse in a lot of ways when I experienced racism, because I didn't have a package to understand what was happening to me, because I was always dealing with what should be the case rather than what was actually happening. And I don't say that as a critique of my mother, like that, I'm angry about it or anything like that. It's just an analysis. And in like the person that I am now, it would have been I can say in hindsight that it would have been helpful to be able to have some understanding around what was occurring to me so that I didn't internalize it, because that was what happened. And I think that, and I'm getting real technical here, internalized racism is a response oftentimes to not understanding what is happening to you. And so you blame yourself for the racism that you're experiencing because everybody should just be colorblind. I don't see color, but our differences are what make us unique. This notion that in order to be American, you have to give up your identity, your ethnic identity, in order to buy into some collective identity that actually doesn't really have anything to do with you, is oppressive, and it's wrong, and it's based in white supremacy. And I think that if we really want to be purveyors of critical thought, we need to be okay with difference. We need to talk, grapple with the difficult conversations, figure out ways to move forward. Because if we just continue to ignore things won't get better. They're just they'll actually get worse, because it'll just get deeper into our, society, and we create two societies, So I think that it's really important that we acknowledge that we have differences and that differences are okay.
You wearing over time, or if you're constantly getting into power struggles with your kids and it feels like they're not listening to you and you're not making progress, what do you do? Or what's the answer for just consistent power struggles? Because I think that's something a lot of people have to deal with.
Yeah, it's a really good question, particularly during COVID, because what happens when people feel like they've lost some control over their lives, like in COVID, families and young people have lost control over their lives. We've landed on two things that people can do to deter their kids getting into power struggles with them. The first one, and probably the most important one, is to ask your kids future-oriented questions all the time. Future-oriented questions are, what do you want to be when you grow up? What are you going to do before you go to dinner? What are you going to do this weekend? Two things happen when we ask future-oriented questions. When parents ask their kids future-oriented questions, is that number one, it compels them to think about their future in a positive way, which gives them control over their life. The second thing that we encourage families to do is to give as many choices a day to your kid as you possibly can. And they have to be choices that the parent can live with. And what happens when we give our kids choices is that it deters them from getting into power struggles with us. The second thing that it does is it compels them to use the prefrontal cortex part of the brain. We've asked foster parents and some of the agencies that I'm consulting at to give their kids 150 choices a day.
It sounds like a lot of work.
It is a lot of work, but those parents that have been experienced and trained at it, they can give many of those positive choices before the kid goes to school. And it looks like this. You can wear the brown socks or the blue socks. You can wear one brown one and one blue one. You can wear socks or not wear socks. You can get up at 8 or 8:03. Mm-hmm. Those seem like really silly sort of choices. But the fact is, when they see us as parents and adults giving them choices over their life, it lessens the likelihood that they're going to get into power struggles with us because they see us as benevolent. The third thing that we've landed on to decrease power struggles and deter kids from getting into power struggles is to reduce rigid rules in families that should be, we believe rigid rules should be limited to health and safety. If you ride a bike, you got to wear a helmet. That's a rigid rule. If you ride in the car, you've got to wear a seatbelt. That's a rigid rule. But anything else, like things like bedtimes or what kind of clothes they wear, what kind of the quantity of food that they eat, we should really look at those things as ways of not getting into power struggles or having rigid rules. As a young parent, I used to get into classic power struggles with my son about wearing a coat. because of the weather, So I'd say it's the weather's, not good. You need to wear a coat. I don't want to wear a coat. I'm insisting that you wear a coat, but I really don't want one. And I'd keep insisting that he did it. So even when he left the house with the coat, as soon as he turned the corner, what do you think happened to the coat? It went away. So I didn't win the power struggle. So those three things, talk about the future with your kids, ask them future-oriented questions, give them as many choices and as much autonomy a day as you possibly can. And then the third one is to minimize rigid rules.
Thank you for watching. Thank you for being part of this journey with us. I really feel like we're just getting started. This is the beginning of the beginning, and we have a lot more great episodes, hopefully for years to come. So we'll see you in 2021. Be safe, be kind to yourself, and we'll see you next time on the Parental Compass. Peace.